أعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له والصلاة والسلام على النبي خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. Dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to thank you again for making the time tonight after rushing through your iftar and your prayers, maybe your prayers and your iftar, to make it here so you can benefit from the blessings of this month. For this month, its blessings is not only in holding back your hunger and thirst, but the fasting is also through your actions and what you do. The way you seek closest to Allah Azza wa Jal through your supplications, through your prayers, what you do in your day, how you do it, and the intent throughout is to be solely towards Allah Azza wa Jal. That everything you do through your day, every act, how much of it is directed towards Allah Almighty Azza wa Jal. Tonight, inshallah, we shall continue our discussion about how should we live our life. In tonight's speech, I will focus on 3 points. I will talk about how we can make our life a principle-centered. Then I will talk about the importance of such a life that is a principle-centered, and I will end it with the result of such life, inshallah. The importance of talking about life, and we've been talking in the past few nights about how some of us live life is through different lenses. We see things through different lenses. And some of us will live life through the lens of the friends, of school, of parents, sometimes through objects. And one thing I mentioned yesterday, I want to repeat again. For those who revolve their life around objects, around obsession with things, with items, what ends up happening? It's very simple. I want you to hear this equation again. If who I am is what I have, listen to this very attentively. If who I am is what I have, whether it's, for example, would be my car, my house, my possessions, my worldly possessions. If my worldly possessions define who I am, if who I am is what I have, and what I have is lost, look, what I have is lost, then who am I? I lose myself by losing the objects which define me. I lose myself the moment I lose these objects. That's why life becomes so shaky, so meaningless, if I make it surrounded around what? Around objects, around things that I am obsessed with, possessions that I have. The moment I lose them, I lose myself. Is this what Allah Azza wa Jal wants for me? Is this the kind of life Allah the Almighty wants for me? Is this the way our Prophet, our Imams والسلام, would want me to shape my life around my possessions and what I have? No. Okay, we talked in the past few nights. If it's not this, not that, what kind of life should I lead? What should my life be centered around? My life, dear brothers and sisters, should be centered around things that don't fade with time. Things that would be everlasting, I can take them with me to the hereafter. Things that have meaning, in-depth meaning. Things that when they define me, they define depth with me. Let me make it clear, dear brothers and sisters. There is so much value in each and every one of you. You come here, you spend the time because you want to do something, you want to learn something. Something must happen. See, there's something I really hate hearing all the time. I hear it so often, and I want to make sure that in your minds, in this community mind, especially in this group, do not allow it to take control of you. What is that? Oh my God, look at our community. Our community is so backward. Our community is failing. Our community is bad. Our community is this, is that. These are all wrong statements. See, us as individuals, we make this community. And this community is as strong as the individuals that make it up. And let me tell you about our community. Our community is one of the strongest communities, one of the most vibrant communities, because of the individuals that brought it today where it's at. Each and every person that lived through the times in this community, in this city, made and was able to help building all these institutions, all these centers, where we are gathered today to learn, to safeguard our religion and our faith. This community is strong because of the people who build it, and will remain strong because of the people who will carry it on. These, you are the people who will be, inshallah, the fuel for the next generation, the fuel for this generation. It is very important not to give ourselves up and not to sell ourselves short. It is very disappointing when people put down our community, put down the individuals in our community. Our community is strong because of you, because of the people that is in it. And you have to look at what kind of people. Yes, we have a long way to catch. We have so much to work on. We have so much to learn. It doesn't mean that we are not good. It means we have so much to work on. But you need to, in order for you to move strong forward, to realize the strong platform you're standing on. And you're standing on a very strong platform. Today you're handed the opportunity to be so much more than those who came before you because of what they did to provide you this opportunity. Therefore, you need to look very positively at your community and at yourself. And you need to realize one thing. You as an individual, each and every one of you has the potential to lead and to change this world. How is this world is changing? Let's look at very small things throughout the world today that change the entire way we look at things. Look at small things like the iPhone, the iPad. It changed the way we do things. It entered every house. We become so dependent on it. It was because of one person, one mind, one idea. It changed so much, it entered every single household. Today, literally, if you look at the phones that we use, the cell phones that we cannot live without, it goes back to 2 or 3 ideas that made it the way it is today. Why is it that we cannot be those who make up these ideas? Look at today's ideas are made and delivered by a search engine we all use, we all benefit from. You know what I'm talking about, right? If you don't know something and you want to know about it, you ask your teacher, you ask your friend, what do you do? What is the first thing most likely you will do? Anyone? Let me hear it out. Google it, exactly. It became a verb, it became a word. Yet, it is the makeup of few individuals who had an idea and had an awesome idea, had a wonderful idea. They didn't give up. They stayed hard at work in order for them to make it happen. And look where they're at today. Why don't you think it could be you who can build not the next Google, not the next iPhone, but whatever next idea you think is worthy of being built? Why is it that we don't believe in ourselves that we can change the world? We can change the world, and we have been changing the world. The fact that we are part of this movement. What kind of movement? The movement that Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam left us so we can benefit from and we can live our lives through. Let me make it very clear. We today are part of history. But what history? I can say I'm part of the 2014 history. This year 2014. Every single day I live this history, I live this life, I am part of it. I live in Dearborn, in Michigan, in the United States of America. If I do something worthwhile, everyone will remember it. But if I don't, I won't even remember it. My day will pass by like nothing happened. Right or wrong? But if I become someone meaningful, that what I say and what I do leaves an imprint that everyone around, or many people around me, are affected by it, what happens? They talk about it. The result of talking about it, that people remember it. The result of people remembering it, what happens to it? It becomes written in history. But the fact is, each and every one of us is writing history. The only thing, when it becomes what you're doing so valuable, so influential, so meaningful, that it affects so many people around you, that many people remember it, and therefore it becomes part of history, and therefore we say, you have written history. Okay? So the question is, how can we be of those who write history, the meaningful history? You and I, Ahlul Bayt Salamullahi Ta'ala Alayhim, gave us the formula, gave us the equation. As a matter of fact, the moment you start thinking that you are someone who is acting and doing things like Ahlul Bayt Salamullahi Ta'ala Alayhim, you have become influential. Why? Because the most important thing, in order for you to see your influence everywhere, you need to start influencing yourself, controlling yourself, taking hold of who you are, and changing who you are, and making sure who you are is what you want to be. You are not someone that is influenced and moved by your surrounding, by your friends, by your peers, by school, by your parents, by this and that all of it might change. No, you can change your life the way you want. The question is, what is it that you want to become? That is the most important question. And today I tell you, in order for you to be successful, and in order for you, and let me tell you, it is not also important that you write history for people. It is not important that you make history so people can read it. The most important thing that Allah Azza wa Jal throughout the Holy Quran emphasizes is not that Allah Azza wa Jal says do it for others. Do it for yourself. You know why? Because Allah says in the Holy Quran, whatever you do, you shall see in the hereafter. Therefore, the reality of the matter is that you're writing your own history for your own self so you can live it eternally. And I will tell you about that more in the last point, inshallah. But now, in order for us to build ourselves, to build such a powerful life so we can write our history, our own history, and make sure Allah Azza wa Jal sees, because He sees everything. But we make sure that Allah is pleased with what we're writing. Dear brothers and sisters, we ought to make our lives around and write it around what? Our lives need to be centered around principles. Why is it? Principles, like there are principles, dear brothers and sisters, that rule the physical universe. Right now, look at this bottle. What's in the bottle? Water. If I were to let go of this bottle, what happens? What if I let go of this bottle? What would happen?
It would fall.
It would fall, and if it falls, what happens? Break open. You want me to try that? The ladies in the front, like, no. Go ahead, yeah, of course. There is a physical rule. There is gravity, and when an object falls down, gravity will act on it, the mass, and it will cause the action, the reaction. In everything else, in the human universe, there are rules and laws. Allah Azza wa Jal explained them to us at length in the Holy Quran. These principles, dear brothers and sisters, apply equally to each and every one of us. These principles cannot be bought and cannot be sold. You live by them, you excel. You leave them behind, you fail. It is that simple. You acquire them. You follow them, you become successful. You let them go, you don't care for them, you shall fail. Examples: honesty, respect, loyalty, hard work, to be grateful, to appreciate. All these principles, dear brothers and sisters, are important. These are principles that have been from the beginning of time. The people 100 years ago, they wanted to acquire these principles. The people 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, they all wanted to acquire these principles. And as long as we live, humanity, humans, individuals, they want to acquire these principles. Have you ever said or seen someone say, man, you know what? My dream, my wish is to become the worst, the best liar. Have you ever seen someone say that? I want to lie so much, that's my dream. No one wants to lie, becoming dishonest. Have you ever seen someone who is known to be dishonest, how he or she is looked at by his peers? Whenever he says anything, whenever she says anything, they're never respected. Why? You know why they're not respected? Because they're dishonest. Dishonest people, they will have a certain reaction to them. Disloyal people, disrespectful. Let me tell you, there's one thing in life I cannot, personally, I'm going to tell you personally, I cannot handle disrespect. When someone disrespects me, that's it, they're vexed. Why? Because when someone disrespects you, it means they don't put any value towards you. You mean nothing to them. When someone disrespects you, and by the way, disrespect comes in many different ways. Let me tell you, especially your sisters and guys, your brothers, let me tell you, disrespect. How do people disrespect one another? Sometimes we think disrespect is when someone yells at someone, or looks down at someone, or maybe not open the door for someone, or not listen to someone when he's talking. But disrespect comes in many different ways. Many different ways. Sometimes a respectful young lady is walking, and then the guy starts hawking her, looking at her, checking her out. What is that? That's disrespect. That's a man, a young man, disrespecting the young woman. What is he doing? Look at the formula, look how twisted it is. In reality, some ladies, some girls, and I'm sure none of you here, think, oh, look at him, he's checking me out, he's giving me attention, I am important. As a matter of fact, no, he's not. Because you're easy to look at, he's checking you out. Because he thinks that you can be checked out. You don't have any barriers, that his eyes can look at you and check you out. There is no respect. So in order for us to think, if I'm a person whose life is principle-centered, meaning centered around principles, it would affect the way I even control what I look at. And by the way, ladies, if you are a principle-centered person, you will care how you step outside the house, in what form, and how you look, because you want to make sure you're not going to let any of the brothers disrespect you. And the Holy Quran and the Holy Prophet ﷺ and our Imams ﷺ handed to us clearly in one word called modesty. Modesty is the protection for both men and women not to be disrespected. Simple. Don't complicate it. Do not complicate it. We go back to life centered around principles. Where is the power in that? See, when you build your life and yourself around your principles, the principles don't fade away. The principles don't weaken and get stronger. Who gets strong and weak? We, in relationship to the principle. Sometimes I will be so honest, I will say the truth and nothing but the truth. And sometimes no, everyone is talking, everyone is making up stories. I'm not going to be left out, I start making up stories. Everyone, for example, right now, let me address these issues, and I'm going to be very real. I will be extremely real, so be patient with me. And I'm trying to address issues that I know most of you don't do it. Maybe your people around you that do it. I'm just telling you of them so you become aware. Why? Because when you're around people with poisonous principles, what would happen? You may be infected. So you ought to choose and pick. You're surrounded, so you're not infected by these two. You need to pick and choose the type of principles that you can live by and you can acquire yourself. Example. How do we see principles at work? We may be sitting after we leave, we want to hang out together. Brothers or sisters, of course, we will not hang out together in a very inappropriate surrounding. A surrounding, for example, when you look at it, see the Quran, Ahlul Bayt, they teach us about a specific surrounding and they say, do not go to that surrounding. It is poisonous. The surrounding of Ahlul Fisq wal Fujur. What is that? A surrounding, when you look at it, you say, oh, this is a religious surrounding, a religious atmosphere. And then there is what? An inappropriate, irreligious atmosphere. An atmosphere that you know, for example, if someone would go to a bar, God forbid, to a club, or to one of these places that the mixing together between the genders and the laughter is loud, and then you see, it starts with what? We're only sitting together. We're only guys and girls sitting together, but here's a guy, here's a girl. They're sitting together in a closed environment. And then they start talking, the food comes, the drink comes, and of course, if they're out at a restaurant, at a cafe, most likely what also comes? What's that? The liquor? No, the liquor. We'll get to it later. But before liquor, what would come? What's that? There you go. The kid knows, mashallah. He's a young man. The hookah comes. So the argila and all this. What happens here? The environment, the mixed environment with all these things, let both genders drop their guards. And it starts with simple things, then with a smile, then with a laugh, then a giggle, then this, then that, then shwaya. After that we have a tragedy. Do I have to fill in the line wall between the lines? Do you want me to go into the details? Yeah? The problem is if a person is principle-based, he will or she will assess the atmosphere and measure it in comparison to what? To their principles. Would their principle allow such an atmosphere or not? Should I walk into this group and sit down with this group when they're backbiting, when they're talking about things of no worth? For example, I was, before 2 weeks ago, I was sitting with a friend of mine. We're discussing a business proposal, and the individuals that were sitting behind us were a bit loud. And they were yelling and screaming, and we're like, what is going on? It wasn't Dearborn. And they were getting into a fight. What was the fight? The fight was about the latest release of, what's her name? That performer? What's that? You don't have to explain yourself, it's all right. I mean, we're talking about that as extreme. You know what? Honestly, that's even worse. Now look, kids start looking at the Nickelodeon and watching those innocent episodes, and suddenly their idol goes extreme. What happened to them? Seriously, what happened to such individual that she just completely went out of control? Why? We have to understand these are individuals that have no principles in their lives. They have interests. The interest is them being what? so popular that they will break any and every rule to be known. On what account? Losing themselves. Losing who they are. Listen, no one, these people, they may get attention. They may get the headlines. But if you really care about who you are, and if you really care about the person, your character, seriously, would you even spend it, would you even give them a moment of your time? What do you benefit from these people? What does it matter what he or she did, what the latest they released? Who cares about that? Why? What do they teach us? What do we learn? It's very simple. He loved her, she loved him, they hated each other, they got into a fight, now they broke up. Right or wrong? Seriously, what do you... Give me one of them giving you something so principled I can learn and I can benefit and I can grow with. And I can say, you know what? Because of what I heard from Beyonce, that I became such a better person. Seriously, do you have something like that? Teach me. These people provide you a waste of time. They kill the person you are slowly. They start by killing your mind. The most valuable thing you have. You know why? Because they occupy it with things that are wasteful and useless. Your mind is valuable. In order for it has to grow, but what happens to it? It just lives and beats a rhythm. And with some words, that does nothing. These words do nothing to you. Except slow you down and make you waste your time. On the other hand, we may be able to live a life of principles. And let me tell you, before I explain further, what a life centered around principles is. Some individuals, when they become so attached and ingrained in these principles, they give everything they have. Imagine you believe in something. You believe in it passionately. You're willing to give everything for it. You will live and die for that principle. That principle, the more valuable it is, the more valuable you become. Let me give you a story. There's one of the companions, Al-Amr ibn Dahdah. This man was sitting in the mosque where the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was talking to his companions. The Prophet ﷺ, and by the way, the Immaculates, the Prophets and Ahlul Bayt ﷺ, they themselves are principles. And we'll talk about it in the coming nights. How could be these individuals, they are the principles. But the Prophet ﷺ, as the companions surrounded him, he said something that attracted their attention. When the Prophet talked, they all listened. He had this presence in him. See, he's a man of principle. He's an individual that built and gave up everything in his life for his principles. He said one thing. مَنْ تَصَدَّقَ بِصَدَقَةٍ لَهُ مِثْلَهَا فِي الْجَنَّةِ. Whoever gives a charity, he has double the like of it in the heavens. If you give $1, God will give you 2. If you give 1,000, He'll give you 2,000. If you give a bottle of water, He'll give you 2. But keep in mind one thing here. What you give in this world is different than what you receive in the hereafter. The Prophet ﷺ says, مَا لَا عَيْنَ رَأَتْ. No eye has seen. لَا أُذُنَ سَمِعَتْ. No ear has heard. وَلَا خَطَرَ عَلَى قَلْبِ بَشَرٍ. And no mind has imagined. So whatever you think you're going to get, think of it again. And think of it again and again, because you'll never be able to capture what you will get in the hereafter. It's so much better. So Ibn Dahdah started thinking, whatever I give, I'll get more. And he wants to see, He's someone who believes there's a principle that runs his life. He came closer to the Prophet ﷺ as his companions were sitting. He said, Ya Rasulullah, li mithlah, I have double what I have in the hereafter. He said, Na'am, you do. He repeated again, twice more. It was yes. Ibn Dahdah had a lot of farmland in Medina, huge. And there were two of his farms that were very well known. He had his house on one of them. He thought to himself, if I give up the best of what I have, God will give me double of it on the Day of Judgment. The best of what I have. The best of what I have. So what did he tell the Prophet? He said, Ya Rasulullah, I have two farmlands. I want to give them qurbatan ilallah. I'm going to hand them to you, and you do whatever you wish. I'm giving them up for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla. The Prophet ﷺ said, and you will get double that. Then the man said, but Ya Rasulullah, I have a wife with me. Can I have her with me also in heaven? The Prophet ﷺ said, Na'am ya Ibn Dahdah. He said, and I have a daughter with me. Can you guarantee us all go to heaven? He said, Na'am ya Ibn Dahdah. Yes. Now, Ibn Dahdah goes right to the outskirts of his house. He doesn't enter the farmland. He's from the outside. He calls upon his wife. He calls her. She looks at him. She goes, why aren't you coming in? He says, I gave up my land as a charity because Allah promised us twice as much. See, this is someone who believes in the principle of giving, of charity. Although it meant getting more on the Day of Judgment, but it also meant that he believed in the Day of Judgment. He believed in what the Prophet ﷺ told him. What did the wife tell him? He just gave up the land that she's living on. Gave up the house she's living in. What did she tell him? Did she yell at him? Did she scream at him? She was a principled woman. She said, what a great thing you've done. You bought with this land, the land of the hereafter. Dear brothers and sisters, there and then Allah revealed a verse on the Prophet ﷺ. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Man dha alladhi yuqridu Allah qardan hasana. Look at the words. Whoever gives a loan to Allah, a good loan, فَيُضَاعِفَهُ لَهُ أَضْعَافًا كَثِيرًا. Allah will multiply it for him in so many times. So whatever you give to Allah, He's going to give back to you. Multiples. Allah Azza wa Jal is teaching us. When you make this world that you live in centered around Him, and that becomes the principle which we talked about yesterday, the principle of Tawheed. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. What does that principle teach us, dear brothers and sisters? It teaches us something simple. It tells me that everything I do in this life, the center of my life is Allah. And the principle is that I will never associate anyone with Him. Everything I do is purely for Him. And Allah tells us in Surah Al-Zalzalah, listen to this chapter. God describes an event, a phenomenon that will happen in the future. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا. If and when this earth shakes, that earthquake that it will have, such a drastic earthquake. وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا. At that moment, the earth will bring out everything that it carried. Because when the earth moves, it cracks open, whatever is inside becomes outside. وَقَالَ الْإِنسَانُ مَا لَهَا. Man will say, what's happening to the earth? يَوْمَئِذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا. On that day, at that moment, earth will start talking, giving its news. بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى لَهَا. That its Lord, my Lord, your Lord, inspired it, revealed to it. What happens? يَوْمَئِذٍ يَصْدُرُ النَّاسُ أَشْتَاتًا لِيُرَوْا أَعْمَالَهُمْ. On that day, men and women, people will be resurrected in groups. For what purpose? So they can see what they have done. يَوْمَئِذٍ يَصْدُرُ النَّاسُ أَشْتَاتًا لِيُرَوْا أَعْمَالَهُمْ. So everything you have done, everything you will do, everything you shall see it on that day. Now he says, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ. Whoever does an atom worth of good shall see it. وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. An atom worth of evil, you shall also see it. Dear brothers and sisters, that is why it's important to realize two things at the end of the speech I want to emphasize on. One, whatever you do will have an immediate consequence, an effect on you in this life. Two, it will have an effect on your hereafter. We all read Dua Kumail. Listen to what it says. Dua Kumail, we recite it. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal. See the supplications that we have, they're also lessons for us. They teach us how this universe works. In Dua Kumail, there's a beautiful part. It says, اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. My Lord, forgive me those sins which tear apart the safeguards. So there are safeguards that God gives me, but there are certain sins, when I commit them, these safeguards, what happens to them? They're broken. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. Oh Lord Allah, forgive me those sins which draw down adversities. Sometimes it is my sin that brings the trouble and the trial to me. My own sin that I commit. Something I do wrong, sinful, is what creates the problem for myself. Some of us don't know, why do we keep having these problems in our lives? Look at the sins you sin in your life. Why is God closing all the gates in my face? Because you choose to sin in such a way, you close the gates in your own face. That's why Allah said, Imam Islam teaches us. He says, اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام. Some of us would be living such a life, we're very comfortable, we're happy, we're enjoying, and something happens, we lose the blessing that we had. Why? It's because of the sins we committed. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. Some of us sit, pray, supplicate, beg Allah Azza wa Jal. Please, I need this, I need that, but it's never answered. Why? The Imam tells us, اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. Some sins, they create a gridlock, a lock on my supplication. My sin holds back my supplication. Therefore, my supplication is never heard. I created that lock. I stopped my supplication. That's why he also says, اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي. See, first we have dua. Why? Because we have hope. But when our dua, supplication, is not answered, what do we lose? Even in hope. And that's why the Imam says, Allahumma ghfir li al-dhunub allati taqta'u ar-raja. Forgive me those sins that cut down my hopes. Some of us say, you know what, I just gave up. I can't do anything. I don't think anything's going to work. Why? It's the sins you committed causing you to lose hope. And the last one, Allahumma ghfir li al-dhunub allati tunzilu al-bala. Oh my Lord, forgive me those sins which draw down the trials and tribulations. We draw the trials, the hardship of a trials with what choices we make. The law is amazingly simple. You, as a person, can dictate the life you want to live. The decision is in your hand. You are the person that decides, that draws the picture of your own world. The moment you decide to become a man or a woman of principle, it means what? First and foremost, you'll be tested. For what reason? To make sure that you yourself realize, are you just lying to yourself? Because sometimes we don't lie to others, we lie to ourselves. And the first thing Allah Azza wa Jal wants you to do is to be honest with yourself. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal forgiveness and guidance. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to show us the path that He is pleased with, the path of Ahlul Bayt Salamullahi Ta'ala alayhi. And I ask Him throughout these nights that He helps us on ourselves. He helps us in our change. He helps us that we achieve what we truly want. And sometimes as we fail, He picks us up again and gives us the chance, the opportunity, the strength that we can accomplish what we are aiming to accomplish. And He helps us in identifying what we want to accomplish with the blessings of Allah Azza wa Jal. We ask Him forgiveness, and with the guidance of our 12th Holy Imam, the last of our prayers, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu ala Rasulihi Muhammad, wa ala ali baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.